On the far end, Luis Tapia, who for over 50 years has reinterpreted the 400-year-old legacy of Catholic devotional art in New Mexico as a modern form of cultural and social commentary. His extraordinary figurative works speak to the complexity of a multi-layered Latino, Hispano, Chicano identity, history, and contemporary culture. Rooted in a folk art tradition established in 17th century New Mexico, his work at once honors its origin, reinterprets traditional subject matter, and revitalizes age-old techniques. Setting his subjects in innovative spatial and conceptual environments, he illuminates the social, political, and religious issues of yesterday and today, and the joy and the humor, which is one of my favorite parts, of daily life. He has received many awards, including being named as an inaugural Joe Mitchell Foundation Fellow in 2021. He also recently received the National Endowment for the Arts National Heritage Fellowship. He's currently exhibiting his sculptures in the Site Santa Fe International, which is up through January 12th, and he also has 3 pieces installed at Axel Contemporary, which is parked right over here today, outside. Adrián Aguirre is a Mexican-American artist whose work focuses on the politics of immigration and of the people caught in the middle. He grew up on both sides of the El Paso-Juarez border, crossing the bridge daily to attend school. This experience influenced his perspective on borders and immigration. His work consists of portraiture and representations of life as an immigrant or refugee. He has traveled to refugee camps, day labor sites, and volunteered with immigrant organizations. I met Adrián when he and his wife Zoe drove to Santa Fe from Las Cruces for the day, here and back, to volunteer helping install a Jet Sonorama mural at the Lena wall, which is just down the way here. Last July, he came back to install his work there. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. It's on the corner of Lena Street and 2nd Streets, just a couple of blocks that way. Thank you, Adrián. Allegra Love is an immigration lawyer, educator, and activist based in Santa Fe. She's a graduate of Dartmouth College and UNM School of Law. Her work focuses on ending the practice of immigration detention, creating community-centered legal services, and defending the right to seek asylum at borders. She was a founder of Santa Fe Dreamers Project and more recently Deportation Defense Project. I don't know her very well, but every time we talk, I find her to be down-to-earth, intelligent, outspoken, and well-informed. Marisa Sage, right here, is the director and head curator of the New Mexico State University Art Museum in Las Cruces. Throughout her 20-year career, she's planned and executed over 150 international exhibitions. Before she was at UNM, she served as the director. NMSU, sorry, yeah, one of those U things. Before she was there, she was the director of the Rima Hortman Foundation in New York and galleries manager for the Salisbury University Art Galleries in Maryland. Before that, she ran a gallery called Like the Spice. I assume that's based on your name, Sage. Ding. Like the Spice Gallery in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and there were over 65 exhibitions between 2006 and 2012. Sage is Marisa Sage, I edited. Blah, 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 blah. She's from New York. She's deeply involved with contemporary art projects throughout New Mexico. She serves on the board of the National Hispanic Cultural Center in Albuquerque and works hard and has juried many shows and for nonprofit arts here all around New Mexico. And she is a smart and generous person.
Thank you so much to all of our panelists here today. I'm so excited to have this conversation. Thank you for everyone for coming and ingratiating us. We have two Crucians here into the community as we have this conversation. I'll just say, as a moderator, first of all, my questions are on my phone, so I'm not like checking my phone. And then also, questions sometimes lead to more questions, lead to conversations, and that's okay. So we'll get through as many of these questions as we can, and then we're going to open up a few questions for the group. So I might start with Louis. Your work, and Luis, I'm so sorry. Your work reinterprets and...
That goes back historically.
Ooh, do you want to start there? You want to start there,
Actually, one of the issues that I was raised with was when I entered school, my name is actually Luis. And when I entered elementary school, they changed my name to Louis because it was more appropriate to be anglicized at that time. That was the culture that was going on here in the 50s. Well, it started earlier than that. It probably started in the 20s and worked its way into the 50s. But that's why I looked at you funnily there, because you took me back in time there.
Okay, good start then. Well, your work reinterprets and revitalizes the folk art traditions of New Mexico, often grounding contemporary social issues in deep cultural roots. What first inspired you to create works that directly engage with the themes of immigration and identity, and when did that shift happen for you, if it was a shift at all?
Well, it all starts at birth, actually. I mean, it's a reality of where I was raised and how I was raised. I was raised a Hispanic Catholic, which is tough here in New Mexico. I mean, that's like this at the churches, right? And so that's my beginnings, was being a Hispanic Catholic here. But the other problems that we had, like I said, was my name change, which wasn't my doing. And I had to go along with that until I was 18 years old and I could get back to my name because I was out of school. But my wife kids me a lot because she tells me whenever anybody calls me Louis, she knows how far back they go in my relationship with them. And it took me like $500 to clear my name, by the way, which I just did a couple of years ago. But the thing is that's how we were started to raise it. You know, the Hispanic culture at that time, we didn't know anything about our culture. We weren't taught anything about our culture in school. And if it was Christopher Columbus, and that's basically about it. We didn't know anything more or any less than that. So, in my growing up, I just didn't have any knowledge as to what my culture really was. Even though I was living my culture, I mean, I came from La Guafria Street down the little ways down here when it was a village. It was a farm community, a ranch community, very Hispanic. And but I'd go to church and I see the Santos there, and I didn't relate to those Santos. I mean, I related to it because I was forced to, but I didn't relate to them as being made by Hispanic artists. I didn't realize that we actually had art in our communities. And so it took me quite a while to get through high school, of course. We made it through that. And I went to college and didn't really make it through that. But during that time, there was a lot of civil unrest with the Latino communities. And this goes back to the LA stuff and the stuff that was going on here in New Mexico in the 60s, land grant issues, farm issues, on and on and on. And I was sort of involved in all that, walking the streets and screaming out with the rest of us, Viva la raza, Viva the race, and being proud of that fact and standing up for ourselves. And I went home one day and I thought to myself, well, what am I saying? I don't even know anything about my culture. I'm out in the streets screaming about my culture and I know nothing. So I had to regroup myself and educate myself into myself. And with that, I found the New Mexico Santo, the art, the music, and our language, and I needed to represent that. An issue that I do have is I'm dyslexic. So I have a great deal of difficulty speaking, actually, if you can believe that. And so I had to teach myself a lot of things on how to learn. But anyway, I found out about all this, and so I started doing the New Mexico Santo as a hobby, basically. And then I realized friends were asking me, well, I'd like to have one of those pieces. And I'm like, well, take it, you know. And then all of a sudden I realized I was taking too much, so it was being taken from me. So I started to charge. So that began a whole new thing. And I got involved with the Spanish Colonial Art Society and showing at Spanish Market, and showed there for about 5 years. And I was following their guidelines. They had a guideline as to, and this tells you again of our culture and how it was being suppressed, that we were only allowed to do art in a certain way. It had to be done traditionally, of course, which is basically wood or whatever the case may be, depending on your medium. But so we were forced into this. And as I got involved with it, I started to notice a lot of discrepancies in how they wanted to exhibit or show our work. And I took it upon myself to start making those changes. And making those changes, it took me about 5 years to get thrown out, because my changes became a little bit more dramatic, and they weren't willing to accept them. So that put me in a different situation. By this time, I also had 2 kids on the ground, and I was living off of my work. So I had to find a whole new alley to sell my work, which ended up going outside. I know I'm taking a long time, but I'm 76 years old. That's only the first 25 years. So by this time, I started to educate myself more, and I started to push the art more. And in doing that, I started studying the saints more and more so, and reading up about them. So I really wanted to know what I was making. It wasn't like I was going to do 30 Guadalupanas and just change the color, right? I wanted to know more. And when I started to research these pieces, I started to find out that there was issues in every one of their lives. There was political issues and so on. I mean, it goes into all of the saints. Actually were dealing with issues on the streets and stuff like that, poverty, danger of being threatened to be killed and because of their religion, blah, 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 blah. So these are all social commentaries that I was working on. And that's where the change started in my work. I wanted to represent those issues in my work more so. So that developed into where I am today. And as the years went, I progressed more into it, and I started working more on political issues, and it's carried me quite a long ways with it. So that's my basics.
Well, I might then ask each one of you your basics, where you're coming from. So I'll go to Adrián next. Growing up crossing the El Paso Juarez border every day gave you a unique perspective on movement, belonging, identity. How did those early experiences and growing up on the border shape your decision to focus your drawings and paintings on immigration and the lives of migrants and refugees?
I was born in Juarez, and this was in the 80s. And it was, I didn't realize until much later, until I moved away from the border, how unique that experience was. If you're not familiar with places like El Paso, Juarez, or Tijuana, San Diego, the communities are just so closely tied. In school in Juarez, I learned also a different story about the border, right? Because we learned that that border was drawn because of the war, that it was taken by force, and the Spanish themselves stole that land from the people that lived there. And so early on, I knew that the border was artificial. It was imposed upon us. And that the border, there's nothing natural about the border. The only thing natural right there is the river, right? And it's that border is as fluid as that river. Our communities are so closely tied. I remember my cousin is here, and he reminds me of when we were very little, we would walk across the bridge to go swimming in El Paso. And that's where I learned how to swim. I learned how to speak English by watching Sesame Street, because we had, this was back in the day we had to use bunny ears and watch TV, right? So I would get American TV, and when my brother, who's my youngest brother, who has cerebral palsy, when he was about school age, there wasn't really a school in Juarez for him, so my parents found a school for all of us in El Paso. And so we began like the daily trek of crossing the border, and it would take about an hour or two. I remember like doing my homework on the bridge, and that experience is crazy when I look back. But yeah, so I think that I went to high school in El Paso. I remember doing the Pledge of Allegiance. And so it's a weird thing, like, to think about later, like, what is my nationality? Because I felt like I belong here, and I also belong there. And so that it's weird to grow up in that situation. When my parents had to apply for our visas, it was a difficult process, and I learned how exclusive that immigration policy can be. Not only did they have to prove that they had roots, they had jobs in Mexico that were stable. They had to come up with about $10,000 in the bank, so my parents had to borrow money so that they could prove that we had that money. And I had friends that went to school with me, they crossed the border, but they had been born here in the United States, and they didn't have to go through that process. So I also learned that, a lot of things are determined by where you are born. So I was born in Mexico, and that's different than people that are born here, and we are treated differently just by where we are born. And so these ideas about the border is artificial, it's not drawn by any sense of justice or morality, is drawn by military might. The idea that immigration policy is exclusive and excludes the most vulnerable. These are things that I think about when I think about the migrants and refugees and their struggles. And that's what I try to do with my art, is I try to communicate that for people.
Beautiful, thank you. Allegra, you've dedicated your career to community-centered immigration legal work and advocacy. What originally drew you to this field, and how have the stories of people you work with influenced your understanding of migration and justice?
I think that my origin story with becoming an activist and a lawyer for immigration was probably going to resonate with many people in this room. Because I'm not an immigrant. I was born a United States citizen, and honestly, probably for the first 24 years of my life, did not consider the issue very much at all. Just didn't really think about it. And my sister and I, she's here. We have a brother who's a Haitian immigrant, and still didn't think about it. Really didn't think about what it meant to be an immigrant in the U.S. And then I was teaching in Santa Fe in 2006 or 5. Whenever ICE had just started really gaining steam in the US, ICE became an agency in 2003 after 9/11, when they consolidated all this stuff to fight terrorism. ICE became an agency, and I was teaching at Aguirre Elementary School, which maybe you went to, in that Adobe building, and ICE came to town. And I showed up at school one day, and there were very, very few kids in my classroom. I'm a bilingual school teacher, so whether the kids were immigrants themselves or they were born here to parents who had just recently arrived, there were 3 kids in the classroom one morning. And I was like, I'm sorry, what's happening? And piecing rumors together, ICE had come to town and made an arrest in Santa Fe, and it scared the shit out of everyone. And I was like, I don't understand any of this. And honestly, I don't even think I'd ever put much analysis into it. Probably if you'd asked me 20 years ago, I'd have been like, I guess they probably have to be arrested because they've done something wrong. I think a lot of Americans are looking at the news right now and feeling, okay, maybe there's something I don't understand about this. And I was like, but something inside of me feels like my heart, like the world was such a rotten place that kids would be too scared to come to school. And I was like, I need to like understand why this is necessary. Spoiler alert, I went to law school, I've been studying immigration law, immersing myself in these communities. It's not necessary. There's no reason to terrorize families. There's no reason to scare people from coming to school. There's no reason to beat people on the streets. But I was so young and I thought maybe there is a reason because I trusted my government and I thought that they had everyone's best interest in mind. And so my career in so many ways has been trying to find an answer to that question and not finding it. And instead, like you say, finding the stories of a lot of incredible people from all walks of life. And if I learned anything, if my I've had the gift of perspective change from that point, and my perspective is always changing. But what I realized is that the decision someone makes to move countries is a brutal one. It is a complicated one. It has to do with love. It has to do with safety. It has to do with your future and your dreams and your past and your history. And it rarely does it have to do with wanting to be against the law or for the law. That's one factor in a whole huge cocktail of decisions. And that's what I've learned. And it's put me in this place of being absolutely unable to judge a single human being for when they make that decision to change where they want to live, then let them make it, and we don't get to hurt them because of it. And so that's what I've learned.
Yeah, please.
You know, one of the things that we don't realize, and for all of us, when you say the word immigrant, what do you think of right off the top of your head? And that's basically what it is. It's somebody that doesn't belong here. And that's not true, is what's happened here in the Americas. You know, up to thousands of years ago, the Mayans and the Aztecs were traveling in this area. They homesteaded a lot of the United States. They're finding evidence of these cultures as far as Florida and all the way to Utah. So where do you draw the line as being migrants? You know, that they're not. They're from here. The land was taken from them and they were pushed out, but they are from here. And I think that's one major factor that is not introduced. You know, the Native American culture from Central and South America, as well as North America, were here for thousands of years. And the government is closing their eyes to that, and a lot of people are closing their eyes to that, not willing to understand. You know, the unfortunate thing is that we're not born to hate. We don't understand hate, we're taught that.
So you've described tradition as something alive and evolving in writings that have been done either about your work or in writings that I've seen you write about your own work. Do you see a cultural continuum that transcends the border or borders in general, one that connects Chicano, Hispanic, and Latino communities despite physical and political divides? And does this living tradition manifest in your art today, thinking about these fluid borders, or rather what we've started to say, these non-natural, unreal, made borders?
Well, I read the question, I had the opportunity to read it before I have to answer it, and I still don't have an answer for that.
It's okay.
So, you know, the way I see art, as especially in northern New Mexico, I believe that it's always going to continue. It has its foundation, and my foundation is in tradition. I mean, I'm rooted in that tradition, but my expression is the movement of that tradition into a different place. Not a different place so much, a real place. Tradition lies with historical information, and I'm dealing with more practical information that is happening today. And I think that's always going to continue in my work, and it grows more so with each year. And there's a lot of younger folks that are following in my footsteps, whether they realize it or not. You know, I see the market, the Spanish market, and I see a lot of pieces, because I've been in this for over 50 years. I see a lot of pieces that people are making today that have my feel or my iconography, if you will. And these people don't even know who in the hell I am, which is great. That's what the way it's supposed to be. So that growth is going to continue, I hope. And the negligence of some of these organizations to continue to keep this traditional path going, which it should keep, because a tradition should always be there. It's the foundation, and it should always be a factor in Hispanic art. But there's also the part that has to live and grow, just like a plant. You know, it has to grow, and so we need to let these people know that they can continue and show more of their feelings through their art.
Yeah, I mean, for someone who's not originally from New Mexico, I didn't understand the boundaries and the borders around certain creations of certain art forms. Reading and seeing your work for many years now, it has been so interesting to me, especially coming from NMSU, where we have the largest collection of Mexican retablos in the United States, an enormous amount of Botos and Santos. It wasn't until I really started to learn about these traditions that I understand the borders and boundaries that are within them. And it seems like your work really works to break those.
Well, you know, it's been a process, and that, you know, the tradition of the Mexico Santo is primarily from part of southern New Mexico all the way into northern Mexico. And it's a very unique style that was developed hundreds of years ago here. I can get into more of history about it and why, but so with that, when I started to make my changes in my work, it was very difficult to have my work exhibited anyplace else but here. For instance, breaking the art in LA, in California, or Texas, or New York, for that matter, with the images that I had was very difficult. It seems now in the last 10 years, the doors have started to open up more and more so for me. And I think it's because I'm terco, hard-headed, and keep pushing the imagery and keep pushing it. And people are becoming more and more so aware of the issues and the problems. And I think with my work is I don't necessarily slap you in the face. There's a couple of pieces that I can say that will slap you in the face and make you look at it and see what the issues and the problems are that we're going through. Mm-hmm. But I like to use the humor, I like to use a gentleness to make the viewer look at my work and study it. And I don't necessarily always like to explain my work, and even in conversations and talks. I want the viewer to look at the image and get the feeling themselves as to what's being said to them. Mm. Is this an issue for you, or is this not an issue for you? I mean, I don't have answers for all these problems that we have. And I don't have a single answer for anything going on at the border. But I do say we don't need to put people in cages. Yeah. We don't need to break families. There's gotta be a better way. And that's where I want my work to go and continue to go.
I think that will then lead us to another really important question that I have. I think maybe why Matthew asked me to moderate this panel is, as a curator, I work with, and I think it's really important to support and give platforms to a lot of artists who do a lot of social justice and practice work. And my interest is much more often in artists who are helping ask different questions rather than maybe specifically telling us exactly how to think or giving us solutions per se. But with this in mind, and Allegra, I'd love to know what you think about this too. can art make a tangible difference in addressing the realities of migration and immigration? And if so, how does creativity intersect with advocacy and awareness? Adrian, do you want to start?
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Yeah, this is a question I ask myself often, because I want to feel that I'm making a difference. I think that art can play an important role, and it's because art has the capacity to reach you at your heart, at your emotions, and oftentimes that is the strongest way to counter the narrative that's out there in conservative media or mainstream media. So I use portraiture a lot, and I mean, obviously I love drawing the figure, but it's also because there's something about especially when you get to meet that person, that you understand their personality, their psychology. And so to me, for my work is strongest when people are able to connect. And so when I hear people say like, oh, that looks like my grandma, or that looks like somebody I work with, then I think that othering that the mainstream media or conservative media tries to do with immigrants changes, because it's not somebody that's different than you, it's somebody that you know. And that affects how you think about policy. I also find a lot of, I've been reading James Baldwin, because James Baldwin has a lot to say about the role of artists. And I don't have the quote memorized, but it goes something like, artists are there to light the path through darkness and to make the world a more human dwelling place. And I think about that a lot, and I hope to accomplish something like that. Yeah.
Agree. And I think I just want to elaborate from my perspective on what Adrian already said. Like, I think we are watching the tragedy unfold in our country right now, and we're letting it happen. And I sort of think to myself, why are we letting this happen? And I think it's partially because we are served constant images, whether it's through the media or social media, and even in well-meaning ways, even from the good guys, the good media, we are constantly served these images of non-citizens in criminal posture, whether they're behind a cage, whether they're in a jail, whether they're in a jumpsuit, whether they have ICE agents knee on their neck. And I think what it's done is flattened out our conception of who these people are. When you live a life that has people from all backgrounds in it, you know the opposite. But we have this flatness now where we see people depicted as criminals constantly, and then it sort of eases our hearts into them being treated like criminals. And I think that we've been too saturated with that. And so when you have the opportunity to see art that depicts someone as not a criminal, it can go a long way to counterbalance that. I don't take in a lot of visual art, and I know you are both visual artists, but I think we have a problem in the media. I watch a lot of TV, and it's like, I remember in the 90s, and like there was always like gay people where it was like a very special episode on TV, the character only had to exist in reference to their sexual orientation, and an interracial couple. Their plot line had to be about that suffering or any trauma around to it. And when I watch media about non-citizens, it always seems to have to capture their suffering in border as objects of criminalization, and it flattens people to me. And there's so much more, and people's problems are so much more than that. And we're like contorting this massive, millions of people in our country to this like very, very flat identity of people who need our protection from law enforcement, whose whole life is about law enforcement, and I think we can do better, and I think art can help have a more three-dimensional thing. Like, these are our neighbors living among us, and their lives are more than just their immigration status. And they grieve and love and make art, and they fuck up, and they have families, and they are trying for jobs in the exact same way all of us citizens are. And we have to like work really, really, really hard against the flattening of people into this like criminality, whether you're on their side or not. I have no idea if any of that made sense.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. I was not saying that as articulately. I think, you know, when I was saying questions, I was also saying that there is, if you give people just one way that they should be thinking, they can't think around it, right? So what you're saying is that art helps us think around, right? And also can give us these multiplicities of different views. And therefore, we're not only seeing the images that are on our screens. We can walk into something that's super abstract and sculptural, and we have to work to figure out how that might tie to all of the complexities of what we're dealing with right now.
Well, you know, artists are historians. You know, if you go back to the beginnings of mankind, what's the first images that you see? It's art. It's on the walls. And that art becomes a language. It's a way of vocalizing their life and what's going on in their life at that particular time. If it weren't for art, we probably wouldn't know half of what we do know about our ancestors going back. And so I believe that artists are still continuing that tradition of exposing their life as they see it and as they live it.
And the complexities of it.
Exactly.
They hold and they tell the stories of the complexities of the times.
And that's something that you can't get in a book,
right,
necessarily, and you can't get it in the school system. Of course, the school system wouldn't probably allow that to come through, right? But through art, you can communicate with people. And that's the great thing about Axel. I'll throw Axel in here because they take art and they drive it around town and take it to people that wouldn't normally see art.
And they also see themselves, right? I'll plug the E Pluribus Unum exhibition that we had at NMSU this year with Matthew and Jerry. Thank you so much. Jerry is an alumni of NMSU. Go Aggies!
Well, I'm a semi-annual. I was thrown out.
Of NMSU?
Yeah.
Oh, we need some kind of.
Is that a single logo?
Oh.
Four of us.
We love each other. Let's be real. Yeah, we got to get you some kind of honorary degree. That's good to know. Allegra, you work daily with systems that are often slow to change. How do you balance the legal realities of your work with the human need for compassion, hope, and reform?
I mean, I would argue that it is not slow to change right now. We're seeing like a pretty unbelievably rapid collapse of the rule of law around the issues that I work on. And I think the only thing that's going to be slow is if we ever decide we want to rebuild what we're breaking right now. That's what's going to be slow. But the breaking is happening at a rate that is, I mean, utterly astonishing in the field that I work in. And then I guess you're saying, how do I balance hope and compassion? You're talking to me on a day I can't.
Yeah.
Everyone, like, I know that you're like supposed to, when you're like, I'm gonna start crying. I've already cried like 3 times today. This might have to see it. It's not pretty. We're like, I always get like asked to like deliver a message of hope when I speak publicly. Like, it's like one of the pressures among many. The so many pressures is to make people feel not that bad, but it's I can't get talking about like the nuances of federal law and regulation that are like collapsing and creating this vacuum where peoples are allowed to have their rights abused. Like we are conceding to the absolute destruction of their rights, and there's not a lot of hope in the law situation, but of course we find hope among each other, among the examples we're starting to see more and more daily of people who have just like a little more courage than you could ever expect a person.
Like you.
But like there's people who are doing awesome shit because they like are finding like courage in this like terrible mess. They're finding courage that they didn't think they had in them, and it's happening all over across all sorts of disciplines. And I think like I'm trying to look for that inside myself. I think a lot of people, like while you're here trying to talk about this, is because you're trying to find what that means for you. And I think like I do believe in humans, that we have like that we are more, all of us, like more courageous than we think we can be, and we can give a little more. And I think we're starting to see with this issue just how much people can dig in and find a way to show up and like step up for other people, so that there is a little hope there, I guess. I figured it out. Got there.
Thank you so much for no, I mean, this isn't easy, and you know, I appreciate you being so kick-ass and stellar and courageous.
I
And
can explain.
yeah,
If you guys just want, I had like, for the first time yesterday, I had to bring a mom to, I haven't had to go to ICE building with someone for a check-in yet this year, and they're arresting people at legally mandated like you go because you're supposed to, and then they're taking them away, and it was too much.
Yeah.
She came back. She's still in Santa Fe and she's with her family, but the whole experience was too much, and I've been crying for the last 24 hours. I've been crying because it was just too much to think about a mom not getting back to her kid. It was too much, and so I'm just like falling apart in front of everyone's eyes.
because you're human.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Just like derailing this. My
no, please. No, please. It's beautiful. Adrián, I'm gonna ask you the last question, and then I think we should open it up. What I do want to say is that when we do ask questions of each of our panelists, while our panelists love what they're here for, let's respect that we're not answering legal questions today, and that we're giving every one of our panelists grace as we ask them questions to being human. They're humans. So, Adrián, because I know your work so well, because you're in my community, I want to know, through your travels, of which you've done an enormous amount, and collaborations with the immigrant community and migrant community, what shifts, be they cultural, political, or emotional, have you observed at the border over the years? And has your work become more personal, urgent, maybe because of that? Because I've seen your work for a long time now, and I think it's always been relatively personal, but there has been a shift, I would say.
Yeah, I think Allegra is right. It's changing so rapidly, and it is, the urgency is there. I think my father, who grew up in Juarez, he tells me like when he was a kid, they would cross the border. They didn't have passports. They were just poor kids. They would cross the border, hang out at the boys' club in El Paso, and then come back. And the border officials would just, they would look at them, but they knew everything was fine. And then I talked a little bit about myself, crossing the border every day, and every day, like every year, it seemed like there was a new barricade or a new something, like more barbed wire, cameras, helicopters flying over, and these fences that are going up. So it's changed a lot. I started working with border politics when I was in grad school, and this was in Denton, Texas, at the University of North Texas. And this, I started working on that because I started hearing a lot of xenophobic rhetoric in the media. There was a Republican primary, and so it was my way to figure out a way to speak against that. There was a day labor site in Denton. It was like a little plaza with a gazebo, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to go there and meet the men that were looking for work there. So I started going there. I ended up going there every Saturday for about a year, and I just started sketching, and then eventually they asked me to draw their portraits, and then I drew their portraits. And I think that that experience changed a lot about how I feel about portraiture, as I mentioned, because getting to talk to them, looking at their eyes, and hearing their stories. Oh, I came from this place, and oh, I'm so happy that you drew my portrait. These experiences, affect me when I go back to my studio and I start painting like a larger piece or whatever. Then I think about that person and who that person is. In 2006, when Trump got elected, things changed very drastically. He got elected largely because he was so much against immigration. He said, I remember him saying, Mexico's not bringing their best, and it hurt. So it was like, that's me, and that he was going to make Mexico pay for the wall or whatever. So then there was these images that I saw, not just in like Fox News, but like in just mainstream media. I would see these images of caravans, and it was like painted in such a scary way, and I knew in my head that's not right. At the same time, there was the Remain in Mexico policy. So those immigrants that were coming here to seek asylum, they had to stay in Mexico. And so they started building camps along the border. One of the largest camps was in Tijuana. And so in 2020, I went over there with a friend of mine, and I did the same thing. I started sketching, talking to people. I met a lot of young people, because a lot of the immigrants that came, they were very young, minors. And I heard their stories, their dreams. One of them wanted to be a reggaeton artist, and I also got to hear some tragic stories about, I met a young girl who had been assaulted on the way over here, and I was, so these stories are awful, and I don't think that the media displays that, and they show you a scary picture of people that are coming here as aggressors. I hear a lot about this idea of an open border, and that to me sounds so ridiculous. We have the most militarized border between two peaceful nations. We have forced people to risk their lives, come across the desert. Smugglers, they're not doing it for fun, right? They're doing it because they're desperate. And I think a lot about what Allegra's been talking about is what level of cruelty is enough. At what point, are we going to push these people away? Are we doing child separation? We're doing away with due process. We're building prisons. We're hiring ICE agents, from every corner. Doesn't matter who they are. And these have costs. These have costs about. To a taxpayer, they're doing it with due process, or as a cost to our personal liberty, and a cost to our humanity. So that's what's shifting in my work, is I'm trying to think about that, Border Patrol and horseback. This is an unnecessary show of force, and the migrants that were taken to El Salvador. For no reason at all, they were just like, we just want to scare people so that they don't come here.
Okay, I'm sorry. I might ask one more of my questions. and then we'll open it up. Everything that we've just spoken about is pretty overwhelming. And these are all extremely urgent causes, but how can we choose where to focus our energy? How can we as artists, advocates, communities sustain while working toward a more just and compassionate future? Big question.
Open your heart.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
Open your heart. We're all the same.
Yeah, this is a hard question. I think this was the hardest question when I read those questions. So I don't really know how to answer that. I think I feel very strongly about a lot of different issues, whether it's healthcare, whether it's poverty. But for me personally, I chose to focus on immigration because it's a personal story. It's very personal to me, and I feel that when I speak about the immigration and border politics, that I have some credibility because I've experienced it in a way. I also find therapy in doing that work. You know, I go to the studio and I'm having these feelings about hearing. Actually, recently I started looking at comments and it was a mistake. I saw the comments on Facebook and I was just like so angry, you know, because there's people that are so ignorant. And I get angry because I'm hearing it from my own community. I'm hearing it from Mexican Americans that are now turning very xenophobic, and they're like, how could you forget where you came from, you know? So I use art as a therapy, and that helps me sustain myself. It's one way where I can take action. You know, oftentimes we feel so powerless, but that's one way. And I think the other way is by building community. I am, you know, seeing the number of people that are here that are interested in hearing about this is inspiring. Hearing about, looking in social media when I see these groups of people that are coming in defense of migrants that are being taken away, that gives me strength and that gives me hope.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Do I need to?
You don't have to. No. I think you answer. I mean, you're doing it. You're building community.
I do want to add, like, I think what people have been asking me for like ever the last year or so, like, what do I do? And I think that you have to root that question with like a relationship with people who are being really affected by it, and like I talk to all these people who tell me they're like ready to jump in front of like an ICE arrest and maybe go to federal jail themselves for like a concept, and that's great. I want to do all that too, but then you say like, well, have you talked to your neighbor about this who might be a non-citizen? And they're like, well, I don't really know them. I'm like, well, then this is an opportunity, because you also might find out that your idea of what they need might be totally different. I just saw an old friend of mine. She's a fantastic person, and she doesn't have her papers in the US, and I went and said like, how are you? And I was expecting her to talk to me about how upset she was that her family's being threatened by immigration enforcement, but it's not. Actually, a member of her family had passed away the week before, and she was really in a huge moment of grief, and we didn't even talk about immigration policy. And I had sort of wrongly assumed that what she needed from me as a community member was help sharing the trauma around the fact that ICE is in town, and she didn't. She wanted to talk about what it feels like to have a parent die. And they're worried about rent, and they're worried about their jobs, and they're worried about their kids' education and which school to send them to, because they are. So I'm saying, like, take this opportunity if you're feeling your first spark of concern for your neighbors, to actually, that's a beautiful instinct, and follow it to getting to know them, because it's through the getting to know that your perspective can shift, and this can all get into the dimensions that it needs to be to sustain the energy and the fight and the courage that we have ahead of us to defend ourselves from this threat.
Thank you. That's really wonderful. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Thank thank you for,
Yeah,
I'll just speak loud. Thank you for this panel. Given that, I mean, the many numerous different kinds of factors that send people across borders, arguably one of those is climate change. I was wondering if any of the panelists could speak to, either as an artist or as a legal advocate or as an activist, to what extent you felt it necessary to think your work in relation to climate justice.
That's another one of my issues. I've been dealing with the climate change in my work since long time ago, and especially with water, the water necessities that we need today and how we're abusing our waters is insane. And I do deal with that in my work quite a bit. There's so many things that are wrong, not only with climate change, immigration, and all that, you know, one artist can't do it all, you know, so we need help.
I don't really, there are so many other things that I'm thinking about that, I mean, obviously I think about it personally, but in my artwork, I don't, that's not something that I'm focusing on right now, but it is important. It is something that it's gonna affect us. It's, you know, it's like that movie, Don't Look Up, I don't know if you saw that, but it's like, people are just like, oh, doesn't matter. We're about to hit some terrible things, we don't, yeah.
So, hold on a minute.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So,
Bad moderator.
I work at the border, on Borders, and basically, the right to seek asylum in the United States is done. And trust me, like when the right to seek asylum was alive and well in the United States, it does not protect people who need to move because of climate issues. And the problem with the militarization, I mean, like the tech, the militarization of the border, is that it's closing in all aspects, legally, functionally, walls, invisible walls of tech. And movements sometimes is a choice and sometimes it's not. Where if you can't drink water, if you can't grow food, if you can't put food on your table, if you can't breathe, you have to move. Migration is a part of life on Earth. Birds do it, animals do it, humans do it. We've been doing it for ages. And we're in this moment, and I think it's because of climate change, we can feel it coming, that people are going to need to cross borders even more than they've ever had to. And at the same time, not just in the United States, but globally, we are developing systems of cruelty to make sure, like, that they're gonna, that they can't. But the problem is like, what do you do if you're gonna die? How bad, like, then the only way to stop people who have to move because they're gonna die is to kill them. And we're gonna have to start killing people because you can't go back to a place where you can't breathe, where you can't eat, where you can't drink water. Then you have to risk getting killed. And so people are gonna still keep trying to cross borders, and in our nations around the world, we're gonna have to kill them. And I know that's like the darkest thing to say, but I've been studying these systems for years. And that's why it's absolutely critical that we wrap our heads around what exactly we're doing right now in this country. Because people are not going to stop moving. It is not possible for people to stop moving around this world. And so are we gonna let ourselves start executing people at borders? And that's the question we have to ask ourselves, because that is the convergence that we're heading for. And and what we're experiencing as a nation with this fascism is about climate change, as it is about global pandemic, as it's about capitalism. It's about all of that. And how far are we willing to go to stop people from moving? It's pretty dark, what we've seen as like a nation and a globe.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yes.
A question for Adrian. What have you seen on the U.S. side of the border in reaction to all the changes in policy? I've been to El Paso a lot and Cortez as well, and the border hasn't existed in the hearts of many people we've met on both sides. And now commerce, the attitudes are shifting. I'm just wondering what the reaction is on the U.S. now.
Here in the U.S., with the I'm sorry, in El Paso, like in the border towns.
In the border towns.
Okay. Okay. It's very strange because life goes on. People have to go to work. People have to go to school. It's not something that you see like you would. Oh, I see it right away. ICE hasn't come to El Paso in a strong way like it's gone to like Chicago. It is there. Like you hear, there was a news story about Chaparral, New Mexico, which is right outside El Paso. Recently, but it's affecting us in small ways. I think, at least at this point. I have a colleague who, and I work at New Mexico State University. So I have a colleague who got a job, was set to work. She was ready. But now, because of the changes, she can't come to work anymore. She's stuck in Juarez. I have a brother who lives in Canada, and he's afraid to come. I think it's while our border community has very strong ties, I think it's going to be very hard for the Trump administration to close up the border permanently. I think if he does, he'll start seeing some problems because it'll separate families. It'll separate people come to work every day, go to school. There's sorry, that's not a great answer, but that's what I'm noticing. Yeah.
The emotional, I'm sorry, the emotional quality on both sides, and people who share families, friends, and it's not limited by the border.
I mean, what I'll say is someone who works a lot with artists in Juarez and also arts organizations, a lot of people do not want to come into the United States right now, both for political decisions, livelihood decisions, fear, but I mean, it's all the time. And I've never, in my 11 years being there, I've never experienced multiple people saying, I'm sorry, I can't come to what you're doing right now. And we're only about 40 minutes from the Juarez, El Paso border, but we can't come. We're not going to come right now. That's horrific. But also that the border has existed for a long time at its level of militarization that so many people didn't realize, don't know, still don't know. That's something, going back to New York when I first moved here and having a conversation that has existed, definitely since Clinton, but before that as well. The militarization of the border has been affecting these families for at least 15 years, 20 years. But people have been figuring it out forever. I mean, there are so many kids who come to NMSU every day across the border. Same for UTEP. Like UTEP's, I think it's something like 50%, right? Gato, do you know? It's like very, very high, the UTEP kids who they're coming every single day from Juarez to, and it is absolutely affecting education, families, every day.
There's one factor that I don't think the United States common folk understand, that the major workforce that works in this country is from the South. And it's been historically going on for quite a while. I fell upon this not so long ago when I went to Chicago and found out that Chicago has the second largest Hispanic community in the country. And I didn't realize that until I was there. And I asked why, and it was because the Rockefellers and all these people that were had all these manufacturing plants over there needed a workforce. They sent buses and trains and loaded up all the Mexicans they could get to come and work. So if we don't have that workforce, what's going to happen to this country?
Well, let's take one more question, and then I think we'll be a little bit available afterwards if you have some questions. Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. This is a question that has to do with the art. My husband and I, we were at the border over the last year, 2 years, and we started interviewing the border agents, the people who are working at the border. And there were two things, one of them has to do with art. The first is that we never met one person who had ever been to Mexico. They're working right there, and we'd say to them, where do you go to get your favorite burrito or cerveza? They had never been there. We took maybe about 50, 60 people we spoke to. They said, what does Mexico have? We have everything in the United States. But the second thing is, we started meeting people who were telling us stories about helping people who were crossing illegally. One border agent said it was really wonderful. He helped someone deliver a baby. Someone else said that they helped someone who was so thirsty they were dying by giving them water. And I thought, would it be subversive? Everything we see is separate. You see ICE, you see border agents, you see immigrants on the other side. But what if there was some art showing border agents doing something nice with immigrants? Or playing cards with them, or any. It doesn't have to be real, but putting out another image that there's some connection between the agents and the people who are immigrants. Even if they told us stories like that, but you never ever see anything where there is a connection between the stuff. Is that of any interest, or could that be subversive, or?
Yeah. So I think it's that's an interesting take on it. I think, yeah, I struggle with what you're saying because that's not something that I've lived, and that would start to feel to me like a propaganda, like something that's not real. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think what Adrian's saying is that's not what Adrian sees. I absolutely hear what you're saying as well, but again, someone who travels to Juarez office, every single time I come up here, I have to go through the border. I haven't seen those stories. That does not mean they do not exist. I'm sure they exist. But, I think it's what you're seeing that you're telling the story of. And I think that what I hear you asking for is humility, and there's an enormous amount of humility in the work that you make. Nuance, sensitivity. Okay, there was one more. I apologize. Your hand was up before I went over there, so please.
You have all spoken about fear and about courage and about art. And these things, I think, several of my friends who are artists, we're all artists or writers together, came together at a point and we said, what in this morass
Could you speak up, please?
of horror, what makes us happy? What brings us joy? Because we were trying to find something to get our way through this. We decided that what made us feel joyful, what gave us strength and the ability to go on was to create whatever the art it was we were doing. And so from this, there came a thought. What if many artists from all over the country, all over the world, for that matter, could come together in one place? And those who can get there come, via the internet or whatever, and just simply did this. Not necessarily as an act of resistance, but more, of innovation, a renaissance. Something created, something powerful, something positive that could change the world, because art does. As you said, it chronicles history. It tells us what's going on in the present. But what we didn't say, and what we need to say, is it creates the future. And I think that's something to think about and something to maybe come together around.
Very true. You know, you see little bits and pieces all over the country happening, like the sculptures that were taken down in Washington with Trump and Epstein holding hands. I mean, the artists are making statements all over the place, you know, and I think strength comes in numbers, of course, but the more artists see other artists opening up and coming out, the more you're going to see that, I believe.
I hope so.
And especially in the near future.
I hope so. We want to do it here in Santa Fe.
Exactly.
Call it if you like a creative. So I have these, I'll leave them.
As much as we can continue the conversation. Again, I want to thank Matthew Chase Daniel. Jamie Martin, Phil Space, thank you so much for facilitating and having us here. Axel Contemporary, make sure that you get out and you see the site Santa Fe iteration, auxiliary spot of Luis's work. And thank you so much all for coming.
You're cool.